somebody here today who picks up the lucky win to donate $500 to a charity of their choice, which is just a blessing, particularly in these difficult times. So good luck, everyone, for that. The ICT Forum, of course, is bringing together local IT businesses and related service providers and agencies to network, promote their services, form alliances, socialise with colleagues, and keep abreast of current IT industry news affecting and developing here on the Gold Coast. So if you're not already a member, we encourage you to be a member. It's only $10 for 10 years. And refer a friend, please. That's how we can support these wonderful events for you to network and learn. We respectfully acknowledge the people of the Yangamba language region, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Thank you. So today's topic is protect your data. Do you have sensitive data stored online? Is your business at risk of a security breach in a changing landscape of threats? We're going to hear from our experts right now on how to keep your information safe and secure. But firstly, let me introduce them to you one at a time. Firstly, Mr. Erez Zabusky, good morning to you. Erez is an executive director. Thank you. Well, I like you, Erez. It's a good start. Executive Director at Global Gen with 24 years practical experience and proven record of success in information and communication technology, secure data networks, big data, data science, and in business working in senior industry positions across a diverse range of countries and on multi-million-dollar projects. Erez led ICT specialist teams, architecting and delivering strategic projects from Singtel Optus, British Telecom, Pan Am Singapore, New Skies, ThyssenKrupp, Swisscom, KPN, MTN, Total, Pioneer Elf, Chevron, and Secure Communication Networks for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, and the Hallmark Bank and various other private entities. Erez, that's quite the resume. Welcome to you. Give Erez another round of applause. And to his right, your left, is Conor Naughton. Good morning, Conor. He's from Cybersecurity. I'm proud to introduce Conor. He's a digital forensics and incident response lead for Cybersecurity. Conor has been in the information technology space for over 17 years, focused on providing infrastructure support and technical consulting to SMB and SME businesses, giving him an intimate understanding of how these types of businesses operate and the technology they use, their people and their culture. We look forward to hearing from you, Conor. Thank you for joining us. And last but certainly not least, good morning to you, Paul McCarty from SecureStack. Hello to you, Paul. Paul is a DevSecOps evangelist and the founder of SecureStack, the world's first DevSecOps maturity platform. Paul has been helping organisations build more secure applications for almost 30 years. He has worked for NASA, Boeing, Blue Cross Blue Shield, John Deere, the US military, and the Australian government, amongst others. Paul is a frequent contributor to open source and Linux projects and is a co-organiser of 3 meetups in Australia. That includes Gold Coast DevOps, GC Oars, and Gold Coast B-Sides. He's also a pretty good snowboarder, I'm told, Paul, and most importantly, a good husband and a good father of 3 amazing kids, am I right? Welcome to you, Paul. I'm Danielle Goulet, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I think we should get the conversation started. Erez, are you ready? Is mic on?
Yes.
Firing is about to begin. Watch the hecklers down here. Erez, in today's volatile climate, what does owning your data actually mean?
Okay. So I suppose when it comes to owning your data, there's a few questions that I think you need to ask yourself. The first one would be, especially in today's climate, is if you stop paying for it, do you still have access to it? Then second question I think you need to ask is if you wanted to move it or copy it, can you do that? Then third question I think I would actually ask is, do you have control over who has visibility and access to it? And I think the final question I'm going to ask is, if it was to be breached, or if you were going to have an attack such as a ransomware, could you actually recover it, or do you need to go ahead and pay someone to do it, or did you lose access to it? And I think if you answered yes to all those questions, then I would say, yeah, absolutely, you own your own data. Unfortunately, I think today, a lot of companies have created some of these capabilities for convenience. And I think today, sadly, I think the majority of companies out there do not actually own the data.
So what can businesses do, or individuals for that fact? What can they do to secure it, be independent with it, and recover it? Is it education, Erez?
Education is part of it. I think I'll answer it in two steps: the security and the recovery. On the security side of it, there are a lot of tools, or there are tools specifically designed to actually help you secure your data. Everything from firewalls to intrusion detection and prevention software to virus checkers, VPNs, 2FAs, etc. Some of the latest ones also have to do with encryption, segmentation. But the point is, on the security side of it, I think it's up to the individual and company to decide how much of that are they willing to adopt. On the recovery side of it, I have to say there's only really one solution that we've managed to find, and that is having automated immutable snapshots, the ability to actually go ahead and roll back in time. So if you got, let's say, if you lost your data naturally or through an incident, let's say it's 4:15, the ability to go ahead and instantly recover it at 4 o'clock before the event. But more so to be able to actually see, rather than looking at measuring volume and measuring the quality of data, to actually look at when did that data change. And one of the things that snapshots do, especially with open source tools like OpenZFS, etc., is to actually get the change. So you can have the exact same volume of data in your system, but it could have been completely changed. It's something to see many ransomware attacks. The volume of data stayed the same, but at some point in time previously, it was actually changed. And the ability to know when that happened, I think that's valuable.
Critical one. So I'll put it to the audience then. What antivirus or endpoint detection and response, the EDR, are you using? Is it free? Is it something like ESET, AVG, or McAfee, or similar? Because I'm told in very good faith by the experts here, these tools stopped working about 10 years ago. Quite confronting, isn't it? Conor, I'll bring you in here. What are some of the most effective ways to protect against cyber attacks?
Having a good EDR definitely is going to help you. Having something that is up to date, current, next gen AV, really is not going to cut it anymore. You need something that's going to be able to, again, what Erez was saying, detect when those rapid changes happen on disk, jump in, cut off that process that's causing it. Detect when it's not only trying to find the malware, but also trying to find the behavior that malware is causing. So EDR will look at things like when your volume snapshots suddenly all get deleted, or when they try to get deleted, it'll jump in and kill the process that's doing that before it starts encrypting it. If you look at next gen antivirus, or you look at antivirus prior to that was mentioned, it's not going to do that. If it doesn't know what that process looks and smells like, the signature of it, it's just going to let it run. It's just going to let it run all day long. Whereas you need something that's going to look at the behavior of what's happening. So that's a great step to help prevent what's a ransomware attack.
Thank you, Conor. So we do have individuals and businesses here today. What role would you say, Conor, that employees play in maintaining cybersecurity, and also how can companies educate and train their employees to be more aware of cybersecurity risks?
Yeah, it's no longer just the responsibility of the IT department to keep that side of the business safe. It really is top to bottom. Anybody that's got hands on keyboards or on an email address, they're going to get targeted by phishing attacks, and they need to know how to stop them. There's some ways that you can use to help them using MFA everywhere that you can. Is a great way. Using a password manager will also help your employee not get, and training along with that to stop the employee going to a phishing site. I'll give you a scenario to just kind of pad that out a little bit. If you get a phishing link that comes in and you click it and it takes you to a page that looks exactly like your 365 logon. As a person, you recognize that as 365. Unless you're checking the URL at the top, you're not going to be looking any further than that. If you're using a password manager, your password manager will populate the username and the password field. Your password manager won't care what the web page looks at, it only looks at the URL. So if you get into the habit of, if I've clicked on something, I've gone to my 365 page, my password manager hasn't populated my username and password, that's a red flag. That's something you need to be aware of. Again, MFA, I'm sure probably preaching to everybody that you know at the moment is the single easiest way to prevent your password being put into a malicious website, because it's going to request that you have a code, and it won't. The less sophisticated ones at the moment won't allow that to happen, although that's rapidly coming to an end. That's something that's going to sunset, unfortunately, the MFA tokens, but we're not quite there yet. So yeah.
Amazing, thank you. Paul, hello. On SecureStack, your website, you have 13 things that small businesses can do. It's like a Bible of what to do as an individual or as a business to stay as protected as possible. So a quick checklist there for anyone if they want to jump onto SecureStack.com. What is the future of cybersecurity, and what new threats and challenges can we expect to see in the coming years, do you think, Paul?
Good question. And by the way, that URL is securesec.com/SMB-security. So here we go. I think, you know, the attacks, I think something before I answer the question, something that we have to come to terms with is that all of us are always going to be on the defensive. That's just going. Always they're always on the front foot and we're always on the back foot. That's just straight up how it is. So because of that, they're always coming up with new, more effective ways, unfortunately, to attack us. And a couple of the ways that we talked about was the fact that AI is getting involved, right? ChatGPT, the whole world is freaking out about how cool ChatGPT is. And that will definitely be writing. I'm stealing this from Conor. That'll be writing. You know those phishing emails that we all get that are really badly written and use bad spelling and grammar? Well, ChatGPT will be writing those as of next Thursday. I think the other thing that I think is coming in this particular story is that the software supply chain, which is kind of part of cybersecurity that we spend a lot of time in, how we build software is being attacked. And the mainstream doesn't really realize that because we don't really think a lot about, you know, how software is built or written or deployed. But the reality is the average Australian spends 3 hours a day on their phone interacting with apps. We transfer our money, we find dates, we buy groceries, all with apps, right? And the reality is we all just assume those are secure. And the reality is that, you know, a lot of times they're not. So that's frankly, you know, what scares me most right there.
Yeah, you terrified me now. I've got to always look at.
Good.
Erez, you just talked about the security in your previous statements. So in light of what we've just heard, how often should we be backing up? How often should staff be trained? And are there emerging technologies that can assist organisations or indeed individuals in improving data security?
Okay. I suppose question to the audience is show of hands, how many people here actually back up their data manually? Okay, so you're somewhere over here. How many people actually don't even worry about backup because they're actually using, cloud-based application or software as a service applications, and they assume that, backup is being handled by the company. Cool. Okay, so you're kind of somewhere here. How many people actually have something that actually does a backup for them every single hour or every single day or every single month? Awesome. So you guys are actually there. In terms of how often you should be doing it, I think, for example, for our clients, backup happens every single hour, then every single day, then every single month, and we keep it forever. In terms of transactional plans, that's kind of the average person. That's what I would recommend. In terms of transactional businesses, backup should occur in real time. Just imagine, for instance, if you are someone like MasterCard, you'll be running about 5,000 transactions per second of various amounts. Imagine if you lost a second. If you are an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor, for instance, and you lost an hour of your work, you need to go ahead and repeat that hour for your whole organization. But if you're a doctor especially and you lost an hour of data, how do you actually recover the medical information for that patient? Again, based on memory, how accurately can you do that? So in terms of how often you should do it, I think that's an individual question for every single person or a business to actually decide. But I would say at the very least, 1 instance per second, for certain, you need to actually make sure that you have something out there doing that for you regularly, automatically, and the ability to go ahead and control that machine or software or whatever it might be.
Asking for a friend, is there room for blockchain in there anywhere?
Okay, so blockchain is the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Once you put something on the blockchain, it's basically there, unless yes, there are some events that can actually take it out or roll it back, but effectively you just put somewhere on a public network. I don't think blockchain technology is there at the moment to go ahead and provide an effective means for backup simply due to the speed at which it actually operates. I also don't think we're there yet in terms of being able to secure that data from decryption or unauthorized access yet. But it certainly it has its applications. I think when you're looking at backup, if you're looking at backup of small items like keys, etc., perhaps there's room for blockchain to actually service that and service that quite well. If you're looking at backups of larger items like files, documents, pictures, videos, etc., the technology it's not the right technology choice at this point in time.
Thank you, Erez. Conor, you talked about password management. That was a really great tip. Thank you for that. What's your thoughts on and how important is having a hard copy of a management continuity plan?
Yeah, this is something I come up with, unfortunately, really frequently. And it's something for everyone to really have a good, honest question with themselves. If you've put time and effort into creating documentation, creating your BCP plan, your disaster recovery plan, whatever name you're calling it, or and you've stored that. If you get ransomware, it's no use to you if it's encrypted. And unfortunately, we come across that too frequently. We speak to on that triage call with people, we're getting to know them. We go, do you have a BCP plan? Yes, we do. Do you have documentation of all your IT assets? Yes, you do. Great. Can you send that over to us? Because we're going to need that to help you through the incident. And then there's a really long pregnant pause. And then somebody breaks the silence and goes, it's encrypted. And all that effort that's gone into that is for nothing. And the simplest thing is print it out, put it in the boss's bottom drawer and leave it there. They'll have all the telephone numbers of people you need to call. They'll have all of your assets and services that you need to bring up in the correct order and the order of priority. And all that valuable information isn't there. And it might have been 6, 8, 12, 18 months ago that you wrote that plan. And now you have to pull it out of people's memory and it's going to be fallible. So if that's the first thing you do when you go back to your office, to print that out, it'll be time well spent and it'll be worth reading later.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So some questions for the audience. Are you using multi-factor authentication for your important websites? Are you using it also for your customer web applications? I'll also ask you if you have employees or contractors that write code for you, what tools and processes are you using to make sure they are writing secure applications? I'm told by the experts that software engineers are not security experts. So if your developer says they have it covered, yeah. Paul McCarty, I read your quotation.
That's good.
Thank you. I'm going to read your quotation. I'll ask for a response, please. One of the things I see as a massive problem is that business leaders downplay the significance of data breaches. I hear things like ransomware scares us, but data breaches don't. So they play fast and loose with customers' data and their applications that hold that data. Just imagine the Optus breach, but multiplied by hundreds of thousands of small businesses and how they store their customers' data. They won't say that this publicly, of course, but because they don't want their customers to know that they aren't protecting their data, they will keep quiet. But many of these smaller organisations don't want to spend money or energy protecting customers' data, and that's why there are so many breaches. Paul McCarty.
I stand by it. I stand by it. It's a massive problem. We all say that our customers' data is important to us, right? We don't want to publicly say the opposite, but then we do zero to actually do it. So in IT budgets and enterprise, cybersecurity typically is between 10 and 20% of the total IT budget. For all you small businesses, I would imagine, maybe it's not 10 or 15%. So think about what you're spending to help, protect the data of your customers in all those places of strength, right? And I really want you to consider that, because the reality is that we're in a society right now where data has become, people say it's gold. Data's not gold, it's plutonium, right? If you use it exactly the right way, it's very beneficial. But if you don't, it gives you cancer, right? And that's the reality, is that data out there affects all of us. My mother-in-law recently was part of not one, but two hacks. And the amount of effort she had to go through to get a new driver's license and change all that, that was hours, dozens of hours of the week. And luckily she wasn't attacked in the meantime. But what if she was, right? Imagine that. There's 27 million people in Australia. This is a huge problem. We need to start doing something about it.
I hit the double. My data was taken by Optus and by Medibank. Thank you very much. So you've highlighted that, but in a practical sense, what are you recommending as an expert?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not as hard as it sounds, right? The first thing is that of all the people here, how many of you, and you can raise your hands or you can just think about it, like how many of you actually have custom software, or you have something that has customer data in it, right? Now, if it's zero probably controls that, right? But how are your employees interacting with zero? Do they use MFA to interact with zero, right? If you have custom applications that you've had somebody build for you, whether you build it yourself, you've got a team that here offshore, how is that being protected, right? Those are the things that I want to bring to the fore, because that's why we have so much data. Think about how you protect that. And then if you don't have security experts on your team, which you probably don't because you're small businesses, reach out to a pro. The problem is we have people building software that are not security experts. And when the boss goes, hey, you got that covered? You know what they say? Yeah, I got that covered. Right? And the reality is they don't. Software engineers are not security experts. I'm gonna hit that point again. I know, because I've been working with them for 31 years. And that's the problem. Bring in experts to help you do that. It's not that expensive to bring in somebody like myself that can come in and consult and say, yeah, these are the things that you need to be doing. Let's set out a plan. Let's implement some of these basic precautions, put them in your development and deployment structure.
I think I saw on your website as well, there's some sort of playbook podcast referring directly to these questions.
Yeah. So I wrote something that's open source called the DevSecOps Playbook. Don't let the name scare you. Basically, the idea is like 60 or 63 things that your team can do to build and deploy better and more secure software. Because like I said earlier, we're all bound by software, right? That's how we got here. Everything. We saw the meetup and we signed up with it, right? All of our data is in that meetup site. Wonder how secure that is.
Erez, we're back to you. We've heard all this talk about what needs to be done. So it sounds like a great business for somebody. What sort of enterprising opportunities are there for investment for data security and backup initiatives, in your opinion, please?
It's, yeah.
Yeah, go, buddy.
Maybe it's slowly one step at a time. No. Okay, so look, in terms of opportunities, here's the sad part is that a lot of it is out of most individuals and most small businesses' hands. A lot of people are, like I said, are using SaaS, and you're really relying on what you see on the front page of the website. And people actually put a lot less effort into researching backup security than they do into researching the next Airbnb or hotel they're going to stay in. And that's kind of like, you know, the effect of what life is at the moment. There's definitely a lot of opportunity, and funnily enough, that opportunity is actually quite cheap to deploy. A lot of the larger companies are actually, believe it or not, they spend the most amount of money, but in the worst possible way to go ahead and implement those. So for instance, the Optus breach and the Medibank breach, it's not a case of, wow, it happened. It's a case of, wow, it took so long. I expected that to happen, 10, 15 years ago. I'm surprised it didn't. It's a lot of large companies, and there's a very famous quote that I actually heard it once from a director of a large company, and he came to me and I was working there, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to actually get IBM to go ahead and do something for us." And I asked him why. They clearly said in the meeting that they can't do it, and he said, "Yeah, I know they can't, but I need to spend the money. And if I spend on them and they can't do it, I still have my job, because if they can't do it, surely nobody can." And I said, "But you have another company there and they can do it." I said, "Yeah, they can, but I don't trust them." So if they do it and they failed, I can potentially lose my job. And that's kind of the level of thinking that large business does. And unfortunately, small business uses large business software. So I think it's very important for small business to be aware of that yes, there is something that can be done, and they can actually use the voice to not only influence the decisions that large business make, but actually boycott and use alternatives.
Thank you, Erez. Conor, we've all heard about GPT, open.ai. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Actually, I'd like to hear all your thoughts on that. We might throw it down the line.
Sure.
And we'll go to the audience for some questions as well. So get them ready. Thank you.
Sure. Who's used OpenChat? Everyone? Good. Who's been blown away by the conversations you've had? I have. It's like, wow, I'm actually speaking to somebody. And that's the point of why it's going to be used. If not that, it'll be something similar in your phishing emails. So what will happen is, and we already see this in phishing emails over the last couple of years, they have broken away from that poorly formatted, or maybe the HTML is not right, it's now in plain text, or something's wrong with it that kind of gets your attention. We see now that somebody will go through and they'll look at an email trail, and they will copy the language patterns of the dialogue. They'll do a thread hijacking, so they'll come in the middle of an email and take over that email thread. And they'll sign off things, sign off email. So if you never sign off an email by going kind regards, they never will either. If you always sign off cheers or see ya, they will start using that in there. So it'll pick up your digital accent as you will. Now, that takes a bit of time. With OpenChat, what's going to be is you will be able to paste that entire email thread in there and probably just pull out very realistic sounding, very realistic phrases for the next thing that you want OpenChat to say. Reply to this with, I need to change my bank details because we're being audited, for example, and it will write it back in the style of the person that you're impersonating. So it's just going to make that far quicker, be very automated, and it will be very realistic. The next thing you're going to see coming down the line as well, and that will happen, that will be completely in the next few years, that will be done the way that encryption will be done, in my opinion. The next thing is deepfakes. So telephone calls, we're already starting to see where people will take video content, take the voice of somebody that they're trying to impersonate, and they will take that, they will put it into an online service, and within 30 minutes, you will be able to get the online service to give you 20 phrases that will be able to answer pretty much any question. Things like
In your voice.
in your voice, or in your, I would be able to speak like Paul. It would be like, yeah, that's interesting. You know, it would be, you know, all of these things that you hear on the phone every day, and you'd put it into a little soundboard, and you'll be able to have a conversation with that person. So you get to the one that you really want them to say, oh, by the way, can you make that payment go to a different bank account? I'll send you across the details now. Right. So you've already got verification from email and from phone. It's one of those things that artificial intelligence is going to be bringing that. I mean, that's challenges that we're going to have to overcome.
Paul?
Oh, man. I don't know if there's much more to be said. I mean, you kind of nailed it. I think that ChatGPT is a sign of the times, which is the sophistication and the scale. I think the thing that scares me the most is the scale of the attacks now. This is happening outside of just really using natural language processing and the AI generated stuff. The scale, how good it is scary. So I think if there's one takeaway other than your business continuity plan that Conor said in your MFA and password manager is to always be cautious. Right? That's just where we're going to have to be.
What do you think, Erez?
Actually, before I tell you what I think, I'm going to tell you something really cool that if you don't try. If you will need Linux and you will need a really cool video card, but if you've got stable diffusion, the next Zoom meeting that you actually have, you can actually have that Zoom meeting in real time as your boss with their voice and their team and everything else by a camera actually pointing at you, and then actually see something else. It's an awesome trick to play on someone. But no, but on all seriousness, look, I'm not going to limit it to ChatGPT. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about AI as a whole. Especially in the last several months, we've been tinkering with things like, machine vision and machine learning, etc. And now we can sort of call it AI. And I think the last 6 months we started to use quite a lot of it for very specific tasks. But I would say like this. If you're going to actually use a tool, one thing that we would do is we'll try to imagine that tool is a person that's going to assist us with a particular task. And if that person, or for this matter, that tool can actually give us an authentic response, and by that I mean, is the response genuine? Does it show creativity? Does it show intuition? Then by all means, that is the right tool for that process. And AI definitely has, for certain processes, a great role to play. But if you actually are going to use that tool and discover that the response you're getting is not genuine, then it's not authentic, then that's where I think you need to actually go ahead and put the human element back into it and leverage on your experience and leverage on your creativity and your intuition and your imagination, and go ahead and put some of that human back into your final product. And that means that you're making your final product genuine and authentic. So with ChatGPT as well, we've used it, and it's not only the text component, it's really the API that it has, but you can actually use it to generate code, etc. And we use other AI tools as well. And for certain specific tasks, it's absolutely fantastic. For other tasks, it's if I was to compare it to, let's say, writing an assignment, it will get you a pass. It's definitely not going to get you an A. And I think it's just a matter of, in terms of from a security perspective, in terms of how do you combat that, don't rush to things. When you actually get something, you will actually know. A lot of the phishing attacks that happen, even the ones in poor English, etc., is because people skimmed over the email in 5 seconds, send a response, forgot about it, cleared it. Take your time, have less emails, start following people, text if you have to. But I think that's kind of the real part of it. If you start putting the human side of it back into it, then AI will start affecting us for positive rather than negative.
I'll just add to that is one effective thing I've seen a company use is if somebody is in doubt of an email that comes through, their policy was to ask a colleague. And when you have two people looking at the scrutiny, it's very hard to get past that, that sense check of why would they be changing their bank account even if it's being audited? It doesn't make sense. Bank accounts are really good at keeping records of things. They're not message. So they can take the time from here to here. It doesn't need to be closed down. So does that make sense? Right. And it's a phone thing after that, granted, it's defect, but yeah, it's know who you're speaking to.
You jumping in there, Paul?
I thought about it. No, I think Connor said as much as I was going to say. I think again, it's just being cautious. Take the time to look at what we're doing. I think bad guys take advantage of the fact that we're all busy. We're all moving really quickly, and they specifically craft their emails like we're helping attack companies to take advantage of the fact that code, and we're not really spending time looking at this issue.
I'd love to hear from the audience on any questions. Is anyone burning and want to go? Of course, Harvey. Hello.
Yeah,
Let me come around to you, Harvey.
I've been listening attentively, and I believe that I can see at least some of us in the audience that almost 70 years on Mother Earth. Yeah, I'm saying that I've seen the audience, quite a number of us that probably have crossed 70 years of age, have been in the IT industry for a good part of their life, and have seen actually the evolution of IT really from nothing to where we are today. And what we have seen, just to summarize a few phrases, is how more and more factors have been added, or more and more elements have been added to where we are today. 50, 60 years ago, basically there was only some geniuses, dedicated people that sat, they did everything, they had the knowledge. Really, you could reach or you could break into things. You either threaten them or get somehow the knowledge, or get the way through them into the software. Now look what we have done. Since then, we've added all kind of virus detections, intrusion detection, and really what we are adding now is the worst monster, which is artificial intelligence. And why I'm saying it's the worst monster, because it's based really on a human being thinking. And it won't take too long before this monster will outsmart all the experts that are sitting anywhere or somewhere. And if some of us that actually remember movies of some 40, 50 years ago, you remember how a computer actually took over a whole family, arrested them, blackmailed them, didn't allow them, basically took control. So some organizations try to overcome it, and quite, in the most basic manner. If anyone thinks that when he transacts a banking transaction online, he really transacts with the main banking application, is really mistaken. Actually, he's transacting with the front-facing application, not with the back end of the real banking application. Before anything gets into that real application, it passes such a scrutiny that I would say that to a large extent, it's fairly reliable what gets into it. Now, what I want to ask the panel. So looking at all the chain that is now involved, from the user to the monster called artificial intelligence, how do you balance everything? How do you really think what should be the policy going forward? Because any one of the experts that will tell me, yes, this one is a bit better, I will believe him. But if you will tell me this is the solution, with due respect, I will not accept it. Now, having said that, I remember consulting to Chevron Nigeria some 40 years ago. And the first thing that we have done was really to study the organization, to see what is the organization that we are facing, what are the risk elements to software in that organization. And we discovered something very amazing, that actually the biggest risk were the CEO, the directors, they have the least knowledge, the least understanding, and probably the least IT sense, but they had the most accessibility. They wanted everything from the cell, and if anything was compromised or messed up, it was actually those that got millions of dollars to protect the company and to protect its customers. They were the real culprits. I heard, I think from Erez, that he said that something in the sense of, yes, you rather as a director commit suicide with the known rather than take your chances with the unknown. Because if you say that, yes, I've engaged IBM, it will be excused. Your millions will keep running to you and everything is okay, even if you fail. But if you try something else, obviously you lose your job. Now, let me come to the question after talking so much. Yes. The question is, the question is very simple. What comes out of what all of you are saying is a simple thing. There's no solution. And as long as we are going now to blockchain, Web3, we are just complicating the matters. But really what also comes from what all of you are saying, that it requires a combined thinking and a combined effort. From the simple man in the street all the way to the veteran, the regulatory, and to those that really are putting enough threat or enough punishment. For example, if in Australia you swindle a customer, you end up maybe having 10 years in prison, etc. In the US, you go for 150 years imprisonment with no parole if you can survive so long. So what I want to ask the panel, it's really, what is your overall vision? How do you see the interaction between all these elements, from the weakest and the most stupid point, which is the human being, to those that are trying, those human beings that are trying to be a bit smarter?
I'm dying to.
Sorry, we run
Quickly.
Paul,
This-
take that.
This sprawling epic question that encompasses a bunch of other sprawling questions. So the answer to you asked, from my perspective, what can we do from the every person to the CEOs, is I'm from Detroit. I don't trust anything anybody says, right? That's just the way I'm built, right? Israelis, the same way, right? We just don't trust anything you. And so what we have to do as a culture is become less naive. We have to be less trusting. If you, I know it sounds overly simplistic, but that's really ultimately what it is. Like Elon Musk and Sam Altman and Reid Hoffman, they must not have watched the same movies I did about artificial, to your point, right? At the beginning of that question was, they must have not seen the same movies I did, because to me, artificial intelligence is one of the biggest threats to human existence right now, period, straight up, right? And if we don't think about it in a cautious, pragmatic manner, we're going to wind up in Terminator, right? That's what's going to happen. Or the Matrix. We're already in the Matrix.
Did you want to comment there on that, Connor, at all?
No.
This is burning.
Yeah, I have something to say. So, okay, I actually think artificial intelligence is actually good. But look, there's two things. Most people may not realize this, but there were actually about 130,000 years ago, there were actually 6 species of humans on this planet. And today, we are all 97% Homo sapien, 3% Neanderthal. And the other 5 species disappeared completely. No, but that's actually true, scientifically. So I see artificial intelligence as the next evolution. And yes, the next evolution could be good or bad, depending on which perspective you look at it. For example, Homo sapiens, now we know that they've killed everybody else because their ability to collaborate, and they survived. Most likely, artificial intelligence may or may not actually do that when it actually becomes intelligent. We're definitely not there now, and I haven't heard or seen anyone that's even getting close to, the things that we're actually scared of. But it definitely does actually have a purpose to serve. It's another tool, just like any one of us, and it can actually go ahead and assist us in our daily lives and everything else. The one thing that I would say that has mainly to do with security, and I think it encompasses everything, is human nature is to trade convenience for everything else, which is why we no longer remember how to actually get to the same place we've been driving to our entire life, because we have a phone and tell us turn left or turn right. We're going to turn left, turn right, put in logic beside, because it's more convenient and easier to do. Same thing with our emails, same thing with everything else, same thing as we go into the certain SaaS applications, etc. It was simpler and easier, more convenient, because inherently we are all lazy. So in terms of an overall solution that solves that, I would say it's really simple. Start taking more time with what you're doing and become less lazy, and that will actually solve all the problems.
I actually, because I forgot the first part of your question, which was about complexity and interacting with the front end. That was a very astute observation. And I think that I disagree in the sense that that each layer of complexity, which ultimately the paradox is that we're building complexity to make things easier for ourselves, right? We are building complexity to make things easier for us. And so each one of those layers of additional complexity in that banking application is an additional attack surface to me. I spend all day long attacking applications. And when I see a complex app like that, I get excited, right? Because that is more things for me to attack. And I think that the way that we interact with applications now and the way that they're built and they run in a browser, they don't run on a database, right? A lot of it is running in the browser really close to us. That means that the attack surface is no longer the bank or the bank's data center. The attack surface is your laptop, my laptop.
Well done, well said, gentlemen. Questions? Yep, coming up to this back table.
I'm surprised we've spent 30 minutes talking about cybersecurity and haven't mentioned encryption for protection of data, or signing, or protection of our software supply chain.
Can I speak to maybe so the camera can just go there?
So I'd like to suggest that one thing that everybody here could do is learn about FIDO. Okay? So FIDO is something you're going to need to do to your websites, right? Make sure that all of your websites now are WebAuthn capable. You see, you can get your key. You don't have to use a YubiKey like that. You can use your phone. So encourage your customers to do that and get onto an unphishable or very hard to fish type of environment. No usernames, no passwords. Comments?
I've got one, and I'll keep this really short. One of the things that when I moved here from the US, I was surprised how few rules and regulations there were about protections for telecoms and other things like that, right? And one of those, a good example of that is here in Australia, unlike the US and Singapore and most other places, SMS messaging, what can happen is there's not a mechanism built into SMS messaging that says that bad guys can't use that SMS, right? I'm simplifying for the purpose of the conversation. What that means is you can look at your phone and you can have a long string of totally legitimate text messages, SMSs for NAP or CBA or Coles or whoever it is, but the bad guys can throw another one. So when you look at it, it's there in that line, right? And we don't have a protection for that. So that, to your point, and to Harvey's point, another thing we can do is we can push the government to say, hey, let's regulate things like that. I don't want regulation for no purpose. I want regulation where they can actually protect people that don't understand the underlying technologies. And that's a good example.
I agree. Investment FIDO, it's the non-phishable MFA essentially to our authentication is we're beginning to see where Applications are being abused, token based from an app are being bypassed because it's passed through to the legitimate site, and you might even be able to go to your emails on the evil site. There's something that was sold in March or May last year and is open to be rented on the where you buy something called Evil Proxy, which is where you tell what site you want to fish and it will then Evil Proxy through. So your authentication goes through in real time, and if you put your MFA token in, it goes through in real time. They'll then steal the session cookie and they'll have access to maybe 30, 90 days, whatever your organization has set as the time. So yeah, having these next generation authentication things are rapidly becoming essential. Probably should be on your budget for this coming year.
Expiry tokens. If people are building software using, ask your developers, what's the expiry token on the application? It should be no more than 24 hours. So exactly that. You can't steal a session token. So, yeah.
I think, sorry, I'll just answer that very quickly. On the software side, yes, there's a lot of solutions we can do it. I'm going to bring it back to especially those of you who have employees working for you, and that's the human side of it. A lot of companies, and the larger the company is, unfortunately, the worse it is. The employee becomes a number, and it's not something that started from the company. My kids are in a school, and the email ID for the school is literally an 8-digit number. It's not even their name. And it's actually a great school. I'm not plugging the school, but it's and that's kind of the culture that we've actually started. And at the end of the day, a lot of things that we're actually seeing is that humans, for financial gain mainly, are starting to actually attack companies from within. And I'll give you an example. Another cool trick you can go and Google or YouTube later on is, we've talked about, password managers, etc. But for example, NASA was actually breached in that particular way. Someone went and plugged the Raspberry Pi into the reception. So you can go ahead and do things like a DNS spoofing, etc., whereby the URL will be correct, your password manager will be correct, but you actually never reach inside. So a lot of the things, I think, from security perspective, that we need to start taking into account is not only what we can do from software, and yes, it's getting complex. The attack surface area is getting closer to the end user. There's a lot more of it, but it's also what you can do from a human element to start building that trust, not only from the business into the employee, but from the employee into the business, to start getting that reverse relationship actually coming across.
Hello. Now, I do quite a bit of travel, and sometimes I have to rely on I use a VPN. And my question is, there's usually a 20-30-second lag before I can log into the VPN. How much time does a hacker need to get into your laptop? Is it 20-30 seconds? Should I be concerned about before I get into the VPN that somebody get in my laptop?
Is it the time that it's taking to connect to the WireGuard server or the backend server? Is that what?
I use pure VPN, and sometimes it takes, actually it works quite well sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. But I have to use public Wi-Fi where I am sometimes because, just hotels and things like this.
I'll let one of these guys handle VPN.
Sorry, could you cut out there, if you can summarize the question there.
Sometimes I have to use public Wi-Fi where I'm at, and I use a VPN, to protect myself, not when I'm online. There's a lag sometimes before we get logged into the VPN. How much time does a hacker require to get into your laptop before we get into VPN?
So in that scenario, it wouldn't concern me the time that you needed to be on the internet to get to your VPN. Typically, what we see is hackers breaching your website because the links you may have clicked on, the email, in email or somewhere else, they'll drop a command and control application that will then give them access to your laptop in a similar way that something like TeamViewer might do. So the VPN in that scenario, it won't necessarily protect you against a hacker. What that is doing is that that VPN is protecting you from anybody who is abusing the public Wi-Fi from looking and understanding all of the traffic that you're sending between your laptop and your websites. So if you're not going to a website after you before you connected to that VPN, once you're on that VPN, you're then inside your controlled network.
If somebody has persistence on your laptop, the VPN is not going to do anything. And so ultimately, the VPN in this scenario is not actually a security mechanism. I use a VPN too, so I'm not backing up, but a VPN isn't really a security solution per se. It's an anonymization and it's an encryption, transit. It's a tunnel, right? I would say more importantly, make sure that you run EDR and some of the other things we talked about today too as well. And I'm not saying you haven't, but I would also run those too as well. A good one, CrowdStrike or Sentinel-1.
I'm gonna scare you a little bit,
But
look, a lot of people who use VPNs actually use it for their own purposes. That, for example, I really want to watch Netflix in the US. Now, the other thing that you need to realize is the VPN actually encrypts your data from your side to wherever that VPN server lies. When you actually use a VPN, that's awesome. You've actually protected yourself against basically man-in-the-middle attacks for the traffic that's being sent. That part is okay. What you have no idea is at the termination point, what happens? Because at that termination point, all of your data can be spoofed, sniffed, used, etc., collected, stored, shared, all those things. One of the things that we see quite often is a lot of people just go on to Google, search for a VPN, read customer reviews on it, and actually go ahead and select one. You need to make sure that the VPN you do select is actually a trustworthy one. If you're working on an organization, the organization should be able to do it for you and provide you with one from a reputable company. If you're on your own, you can actually go ahead and create your own one, and you can create your own one quite safely by going ahead and getting from your own basically virtual private server with very little resources, load OpenVPN on it, for instance, which is a simple one, or WireGuard, which is a simple one to do and configure your own one, and then at least you know that at the end of it, that's what it is, and that's probably the best and cheapest and most secure way to protect yourself, not only from the Wi-Fi but also from what happens at the other end of the destination.
Thank you, Conor. We do have to finish up. Is it a quick one, Harvey?
Quick one to add.
Quick.
Quick one to add to what Erez has said. Actually, if you use any of the commercial VPNs, you are becoming the main target of all the pedophiles, smugglers, drug peddlers, because that's the main use. People are using VPN really on the darknet, only the darknet.
I think Paul's got something to add on that.
I disagree entirely. Do bad guys use it? Absolutely. But just because a small percentage of the users of VPN are bad guys, we shouldn't throw away the technology. That technology and the anonymization protects people in places like Iran and other authoritarian states.
Organizations VPN, not the public VPN, not the darknet. Yes, the organization try to enter your banking application from the darknet, you are blocked.
Okay, I think the darknet is its own. We'll schedule that conversation.
And on the 16th of May, we will be covering the dark net.
The 8th day.
The good news is we can continue networking. We continue the conversation here with the gentlemen. They'll be here till 9 o'clock. So we certainly invite you to stay on for that. Enjoy those little treats that are still there for you. Thank you so much for coming. The moment I've been waiting for is the name of the person who's going to have the pleasure of donating $500 to a charity of their choice. In the room today, Kent Plummer. Kent, hello, congratulations. We'll talk after the meeting. We'll exchange details. And just off the top of your head, the charity might be Red Cross. Terrific one. Thank you very much, Ken. And once again, thank you to the Parkway Cafe. They always do such a wonderful job hosting us. Please put your hands together. Conor Naughton from Cybersecurity, Paul McCarty from SecureStack, and Erez Zabusky from Global Gen. That's it. Wow. Have a wonderful day.